people who have ordered a bar safe for a drink to get out of a bad situation? What was your date like and how did these staff help? I've experienced the bartender hero before. Out with a friend in DC, guy comes up, stands way too close, introduces himself and shakes my hand way too hard and way too long. I had to actually pull my hand away and he kept the grip. I politely told him I was visiting a friend I hadn't seen in a while and wanted to spend my time with her and turn my back. He kept standing there trying to talk to me. I, again, but more firmly, told him I wasn't interested. He stayed. He orders another drink and the bartender serves him all the way at the other end of the bar. I actually showed him his drink and said it will be over here and walked it as far away from us as he could. I thought that was brilliant. He got a very, very good tip from us. That bartender was playing real-life social distancing before it was cool. He basically created a no-creeper zone with a single drink. Genius. Story 2. This isn't exactly a bar story, but a bus story with a bartender. It happened back when I was in uni. I had to rush back home for a family emergency, and the cheapest and fastest option was a Greyhound bus that departed at midnight. It was a 4.5-hour drive from point A to point B downtown. Anyways, I sat alone. The bus wasn't very full. I fell asleep about an hour into the ride, and I woke up to a man in the seat next to me with his arm around my waist and head on my shoulder. I was creeped out, but also afraid to make a scene in the middle of the night where I thought only the driver was awake at this time. I asked him what he was doing and to get off me. I was in the window seat and I felt trapped and frozen. He tried to make small talk with me, saying I looked cold and needed a warm body. He said when we arrived that we should grab coffee because he sensed a vibe between us. I kept recoiling and I remember telling him that I'm very uncomfortable and that he should go back to his seat. In response to my request, he said not before I get something, and he tried to kiss me. I pulled back so hard that I hit my head against the window. To make a long story short, sorry for the novel guys, a woman, a complete stranger a few seats behind me, comes along and goes, "Oh my god, I thought it was you I saw boarding the bus. We've got some catching up to do, girl." She said, "Excuse me, sir, do you mind?" really loudly to the creep, and the schmuck got up and went back to his seat. She hugged me and asked if I was okay and said she'd sit with me until we arrived at our stop. I was so glad because I really thought he would have followed me when we got off the bus. She told me she worked at a bar and is used to intervening when she senses something isn't quite right. I couldn't have thanked her enough. 8 years later, and that woman is now one of my best friends. Story 3. I don't know about safe word drinks, but once in my early 20s, I went on a date with a guy who I didn't know well but seemed fairly normal. About 2 drinks in, he starts dropping some real creep vibes. Says that he loves how young I look. At one point, he literally said, "You look barely old enough to have your period." Yikes. I make eye contact with the bartender behind me and mouth help. She came right over and asked if I had been in recently because there's a scarf in Lost and Found that might belong to me. I walked with her to an employee room and explained the situation. She waited with me while the bouncer bounced him. Later, that same bouncer walked me to my car. Story 4. I went out on my own one night and was having a few drinks at a local pub. I just moved to the area, so I don't really know anyone. A guy sat down next to me and was chatting. At first, it was just casual, but he eventually became really handsy. Then the guy actually kissed me just out of the blue, and I told him I was not okay with it. He said I was leading him on, which was not the case at all. He got angry and stormed off to the washroom. I was feeling really uncomfortable and unsafe. I didn't know my new neighborhood yet. The bartender saw that I was feeling off right away. He didn't even know me but could tell. He asked if I wanted to be shown out the back door and if they could put me in a cab home so that I could go without the guy following me. They even paid and apologized that I felt unsafe in their bar. I was totally blown away. I would totally go back there and feel completely taken care of. Story 5. Semi-related, but I was out at the pub on campus for a show and had been there previously on the day celebrating our last exam with some friends. Some guy who was sitting at a table next to us and trying to chat us up earlier was still there with his buddies, and he was more intoxicated and braver, and of course he got me alone when my friend went to the bathroom. He wouldn't stop talking to me and getting in my face and yelling about himself, and when I excused myself to go to the bar, literally was like, "Okay, bye." He followed me to the bar and ordered the same thing as I did and offered to pay, and I said I was good, and he did not stop talking. And I must have looked mad as heck because the bartender walked over and went, "Hey, you were here earlier, right? Buddy, give us a second. I need to speak with her about her tab." The guy leaves, and the bartender tells me I look distressed and asks if everything was okay. I told him I was fine, but this guy was in my personal space and not leaving. So he said if he doesn't stop, I should come back and order a whiskey lemon, and security would be notified and he would walk me back to my car if I needed it. We ended up moving tables, and I think he got too intoxicated to stand up and left not too long after that, but I was so relieved to know the bartender was watching out. I'm not one for confrontation, and it just feels so much safer to be able to duck out with someone having my back. Story 6. My bar didn't have a safe word drink, but my favorite bartender swooped in more than once and looked after me, even at times when I hadn't asked him to yet. I remember one time in particular when I came in with my roommate. She and I were sitting at the bar with our drinks while a couple of guys were sitting on the next two stools. They bought us drinks, so we did the usual polite thing and said thanks, introduced ourselves, etc. Within 5 or 10 minutes of starting this conversation, they'd inform us that they were heading to an after party at their house and a bunch of people would be there. We should come with them. My roommate and I gave each other a yeah, right look and said thank you, but no. Well, they wouldn't take no for an answer. They just kept right on trying to somehow convince us to leave and get in a car with two strange men to go to a house we'd never been to, and then just trust that it was safe. After a little while, my bartender came over to us. He didn't say anything to me or to the guys, not a single word. Instead, he leaned on the bar across from us and started to grin. I smiled back, and so did my roommate, and the three of us just kept looking at each other and smiling silently. The guy talking to us slowly got quieter, then stopped talking at all, and then he and his friend walked away. As soon as they left, the bartender straightened up and went back to work. I have a lot of respect for anyone intuitive enough to pick up signals that something is wrong and confident enough to resolve a potential conflict with so little effort. Story 7. I had to use it when on a date off Tinder. We met up and he had already got me a drink and just sat there, and then said to me that I should do it, then he would take me somewhere better for more fun. I wasn't comfortable, so I excused myself to the bathroom and saw a poster that said to ask for Angela if you're uncomfortable. Went to the bar and asked for Angela, and immediately this guy was playing along, saying, "Oh yeah, she's working in the kitchen tonight." He got me a taxi and walked me out the back door and into the taxi to make sure I got there without any hassle. Never saw the other guy again. Story 8. This is a close but not quite situation, but it may get attention due to the lack of legit responses. A guy I was with was super adamant about me keeping up with him, slamming drinks. He would drag me to the bar and order for me, then egg me on to drink faster, etc. I did not want to be intoxicated with him. He ordered me a vodka soda, and I maintained that slightly pained look on my face, hoping to catch the bartender's attention. When he looked my way, I widened my eyes just a little and subtly shook my head no. I watched him as he poured my drink by faking the vodka pour and just filling me with what I presume was soda water, not normally my drink of choice, so I wasn't sure what it was, kinda like a stale Sprite, and he garnished it with a lime and everything, said cheers when he handed us our drinks. This continued for a while until McSmashy Pants wanted to leave. Bartender said to me, "Oh, you had asked about seeing Megan, right? Yeah, she's in the back. Go ahead while he closes out." I sort of hovered by the restrooms, which were tucked away, watched the bartender BS with the dude for a while, and he eventually left looking all annoyed. When the coast was clear, I came out, said my thank yous, and he said, "Anytime. Happens more than we care to admit." So I thought it was pretty cool that the bartenders were aware enough to pick up on the little signs and help a sister out. I guess during the conversation, he basically convinced the dude that I didn't seem into it, and he thought he saw me leave already. Dude was intoxicated, so I guess he bought it without further intervention necessary. Story 9. Not me, but my friend. Here in Sydney, a few bars have signs on the back of bathroom stalls which say that if you're on a first date or you're feeling uncomfortable with the person you're with, you go up to the bar or just mention Angela, and the staff will call you a cab or make up a situation to get you out of it. My friend was on a Tinder date and the dude was being really creepy, so she went up to the bar and mentioned Angela, and they came up to her table a few minutes later saying her mom had called the restaurant because she couldn't get through to her phone and there was a family emergency and they booked her a cab to get home. Story 10. My university town had the highest incidence of mistreatments for 5 years in a row. The school and community took it really seriously and implemented procedures all over the place. I asked my friend, who was a bouncer at my favorite bar and club, what happens when a girl orders the drink. He said it changes week to week in the ladies' bathroom to confuse men when word gets out. You can use any of the former ones and the bartenders will jump into action. Generally, they find a way to get you away from that person, whether it be a phone call or they need to show you something. Once you're out of sight, they whisk you away to the opposite floor of the place. Bar is on the bottom, club is on the top, and then they keep the date occupied until you're gone. If he gets away from his company, they radio that the drink got spilled and every bouncer abandons their post to try and keep him away from you. They escort you out the back door into a waiting cab. They pay the cabbie to take you home and make sure you're not followed. When you get home, they ask that you flick your front porch lights on and off and call the club to let them know you're safe. They also save the security cameras from that day in case you need it at a later date. I never used their service because my friends were the bouncers and usually intervened before I needed to say anything. My friends did though, and they said it was a relief to be in a bar that took women's safety so seriously because in other bars in that town, you could pay a bartender $20 to spike a drink. I learned the hard way to never accept a glass for someone who had their open palm over the glass. Some people really suck. Story 11. Not a safe word per se, but my mom and friend went to a bar and a guy mugged her friend outside. She entered with her purse messed up and holding a shoe, and their male friend called over to the owner. He called out something like, "Woman down," and a bunch of men stood and went outside to search for this guy. Turns out a few years prior, a woman there got mistreated. After that, the owner established a code phrase with the regulars for if a woman gets attacked. The place looks like a dive bar at first glance, but the owner was a serious gentleman and didn't even allow screaming in there. Story 12. Well, this doesn't really answer your question, but nobody else is answering either, so one time I was dancing at a gay club and this guy, I'm a gal, kept following me around the dance floor. He'd work his way up to me, start dancing, put his hands where they weren't wanted, try to get himself pressed up against me, etc. And when I moved to a different part of the dance floor, he'd show up a few minutes later doing the same thing again. Anyway, we went through this 3 or 4 times, and all of a sudden, these two great big guys in fur suits, one skunk, one bunny, appeared out of nowhere, greeted me with these grand courtly bows, and offered to dance. Although bemused, I took their paws and they led me in this dorky square dance that had these 200-pound masses of fur and sweat stomping circles around me and deterring anyone else from getting too near. A few songs later, they bowed again and scampered off, and I never saw the other guy again. I waved to the furries several times that night. Nice fellas. Cool thing is, that wasn't even the first or last time that furries, leathermen, and fat guys in cupcake-themed lingerie have swooped in to help out when somebody's creeping on me. It's just the weirdest. But I guess I'm not surprised that the weird ones are also the first guys to take action to stop mistreatment. They're pretty brave already. Story 13. I'm a bouncer in a nightclub. No drink safe words, but we actively keep an eye out for situations which don't look above the radar. If a girl leaves with a guy and she looks too intoxicated to stand, I'll take her aside and I'll ask what his name is and how she knows him. If she's obviously been spiked, I'll call the police. If she's scared or needs help getting away from a bad situation, I'll call her a cab and walk her to it. I'll also say to the bloke that I need to see some ID because his entry stamp isn't the right one. As soon as I see it, I'll take a photo, pass it on to the police, and ban him for life from our club. We've built up a reputation as the safest nightclub in our area, which draws both crowds, especially girls. It's massively helped our business being so focused on safety. Story 14. Had a creeper at a hotel bar who wouldn't leave me alone despite my best efforts to ignore him. I even asked him politely and not so politely to leave me alone. He actually kept trying to touch me and told me that I was going to go to his room with him. He had a strange, angry edge too, so I gave the bartender a help me look and said to him something like, "I need to talk to you about that thing with my tab, remember?" And asked if I could do it when the bar closed, which was like 5 minutes later. He looked at me and said, "Give me a minute," made a phone call, and then said, "So they can help you at the front desk." Meanwhile, Creeper is literally not leaving me alone and is still trying to actually hang on me and keeps talking. So I start to leave and the Creeper is trying to kiss me and pull me close, but I tell him I have business at the front desk, and I walk to the front desk. About 3 employees were there, and I said, "The bartender said you could help me with my tab," and one of the employees say, "Oh, yeah, I need you to come here with me to fix that." And she says to the guy, "You need to stay here. This is personal business." The employee, a woman, and I started to walk away, and of course, the Creeper followed us. She actually walked me to a staff elevator, and he tried to get on with us. She told him, "Get out of here and leave us alone," as a male hotel employee came up to him just then, and the elevator door shut. The employee walked me literally to my room door and stayed until I had it locked on the other side. I have had and still occasionally do have guys hit on me, but never anything like this incident. I actually wrote a long email to the hotel corporate office and the actual hotel about the bartender and two employees because they helped me in what I would say was above and beyond. The guy really frightened me. I have been as brand loyal as possible to the hotel chain ever since. Story 15. I'm a straight guy and I had a girl rescue me once from an uncomfortable situation. I was at a bar with a couple of buddies, and these two girls were sitting in front of us. None of us were even interested, let alone said anything to them at all, and started trying to chat us all up. When asked what we do for a living, I said I was a garbage man and had kids, in the hopes that alone would be enough for them to move on, but unfortunately, no. So I must have been looking around the bar with the eyes that said, "Get me the heck out of here." And this nice girl I never met came by and did the, "Hey you, I haven't seen you in forever" thing, and gave me a great big hug, which of course I thank her for. She saw I was super uncomfortable and needed rescuing, so she saved me. I repaid her kindness with drinks and we met up later on for a movie. Since then, I've been more aware of the signs and would help a stranger if ever the need presented itself. Story 16. In 2012, I was at a beach in Toronto. A random 60-year-old man approached me, and at the time, I was a shy 18-year-old. And he simply would not leave. He talked on and on about how I could come live with him at his house and be his girlfriend, all the while not letting me get a word in edgewise. To escape this situation, I decided to call the day a loss and leave, even though I'd only just arrived. As I walked back to the ferry, he emerged from the trees and followed me back to the mainland. He was still planning out our lives together and offered to buy us lunch at a local bar chain. Not wanting to lure the scary dude back to my apartment, I agreed in the hopes of stalling and figuring out a plan. We sat down at a table by the door and I said I had to go to the bathroom, and as I passed the bar, I gave the bartender, a 20-something female, the 411 on this creepy dude situation. I asked if there was a back door somewhere I could slip out of and leave without him noticing. She replied that there was one through the kitchen, but it was for staff only and she couldn't help me. I felt so betrayed that another female wouldn't intervene at all, and I cried a little bit in the bathroom. I was so young, I was new to the city, and I was genuinely scared. I didn't even have a phone back then, I was so broke. When I got back to the table, the food came, I ate 2 bites, and when he called for the check as he waited for the bill, I said, "Well, this was," and ran into the street. I figured he wouldn't ditch on the check to follow me, but I still took some crazy side treks before getting on the subway. Story 17. Recently, it happened to me. I met up with an ex after roughly 5 years of not seeing him. He seemed way off when I arrived at the bar, forgot his wallet, a surprise, so I bought a round of beers but immediately closed the tab because I wasn't expecting to pay for him, and I didn't want him taking advantage. When I excused myself to the restroom, I was already regretting the evening. I left the restroom and he was standing outside the door, and every alarm in my body went off, but I just acted annoyed and questioned him. He mumbled something and walked over to a pinball machine, never played, just looked at it for like a solid 10 minutes, which gave me enough time to call my bartender over and ask, girl, this dude's on substance, right? She agreed and asked me if I felt safe. I obviously didn't, so she let me exit through the back door and even got her bar back to walk with me to my car. Not sure if anything would have happened, but I'm really glad that she was so cool about it. And if you're enjoying the video so far, learning a thing or two here or there from these stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 18. I have 2 stories. First one happened in my early 20s. It was a blind date set up by someone I'm no longer friends with, and the date seemed like a fairly normal schmuck frat guy. I don't like guys like that, so I was already planning on leaving early. Anyway, he talked about himself nonstop, and every couple of minutes or so, he'd mumble something quietly and get a weird look on his face. I couldn't understand or hear him when he mumbled, and I almost never got the chance to ask him to repeat himself, and when I did, he'd ignore me. Eventually, I actually understood one of the things he said. He mumbled, "Your skin would look better on my wall." I went to the bar, ordered a Paladin hard lemonade with no ice, and I was escorted to my car. Second story happened in my late 20s. I had a scarf wrapped around my head since I was bald from chemo and got cold easily. I was on a blind dinner date at a nice restaurant that also had a bar counter. My date seemed really freaked out when he saw me, and I couldn't figure out why. After a few minutes of him being very on edge and me awkwardly trying to make small talk, he gets up and goes to the bar. He disappears with a waiter for a few minutes, and the next thing I know, a bunch of cops come in and I get handcuffed. It turns out he's got a phobia of Islam. He thought I was wearing a hijab, and the police were called because I was a terrorist who informed him of a plot to blow up a shopping mall. Fun times. Story 19. Not a safe word, but a random patron regular at my favorite bar. So I'm there talking to my bartender buddy when a girl pulls up next to me. She's pretty, but visibly distraught. What I noticed was she kept looking around for someone. I noticed her texting, "Hey, are you near XXX Tavern? Some dude came up to me and brought me a drink and he won't leave me alone," as I was going for my phone on the countertop. After a few minutes of feeling her anxiety, I decided to ask her if she was okay. She didn't seem all right. She straight up told me she was hiding from some weirdo and he'd been following her even to the bathrooms. I said, "No problem. Let me know when he's close. I'll help you out." When the dude came up, I whispered, "Go with it," and wrapped my arm around her shoulders and kissed the top of her head. Dude asked, "Hey, there you are. Didn't see you around." And she said, "Oh yeah, I was looking for my boyfriend. You didn't hear me say that?" I introduced myself and shook his hand with a smile. Dude stormed off quickly after that. I bought her a drink of her choosing, and with a grateful thank you, off she went. Story 20. I'm a guy, and this would have been helpful for me a few weeks ago. Was at a bar with a few friends, waiting for my girlfriend to arrive. Friends go to the bar and bathroom while I stay in the middle of the bar because I don't drink and I don't have to whiz. Random girl comes to me, starts dancing. I step away and say, "No thanks," with a smile. She comes again, asking my name, who I'm with, and why not. I say, "I'm with my girlfriend," but she ignores that. I kept trying to move away. Finally, a friend comes back from the bathroom and literally runs to us from 15 feet away and just pushes her away, not hard, but in a way that basically leads her like 20 feet away as he just keeps saying, "No, no, 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 no." And that part was funny, but my girlfriend wouldn't be having any of that when she came, so good on my friend to end the situation. However, that girl then starts to tickle my friend and asks him to sell her substance, which he doesn't have. Then she left and we didn't see her anymore. Story 21. My mother told me a story about a guy she went on a date with from some Middle Eastern country, like back in the late 70s, early 80s. They went to a nice restaurant all dolled up, and he started saying crap about how he is from some super rich family and how he was basically a Saudi prince. He said, "I'm going to fly you back tonight and make you my princess," or something close to that, and red flags just unfurled around the dining room in her eyes. She excused herself to the restroom and was in the middle of climbing onto a sink to get out the window when a server looked in, asked if she needed help sneaking out, and walked her through the kitchen and out the back door. She said she ran almost 3 miles in heels to get to a friend's place. Never heard from him again, though. Story 22. I worked as a VIP host at an exclusive resort, and we had earpieces, like the Secret Service. We had a code phrase, "black tie affair." If a woman, or I suppose a man, but it was never used by a man when I was there, was uncomfortable with a guest, they would say the code either directly, if they could do so discreetly, or in a sentence emphasizing black tie affair into their mic, and us guys would drop any and everything to locate the female employee. We had males of every shape and size, from a huge Samoan, a scrappy Salvadorian, and a bunch of other capable white and black dudes. And I mentioned ethnicity because it was great being so diverse and we could kind of relate to all clientele from different backgrounds and regions. Some of us were stern and others social diffusers, but it worked great and the female employees loved having it. Highly recommend all businesses have a code word. Story 23. Not a safe word, but just a shout out to the women who are aware of other females in uncomfortable situations. My story, on New Year's Eve, I was in a very crowded bar and it had just struck midnight. Everyone shouted and it was awesome and good fun. My fiance wanted to run to the restroom before it was crowded, so I waited near the dance floor. And then a random guy came up to me and started getting too close for comfort and wouldn't leave after I told him I was with someone else. A girl who had been near me and my SO for part of the night noticed and instantly came over and said, "Hey, let's dance." We stepped off to the side and she told me she thought I was uncomfortable and that I might need a save until my SO comes back. I thought that was the coolest thing, 5 minutes into the new year, and I knew it was going to be a good year full of cool chicks. Story 24. Under the time I was in the bar in the States, I'd been a regular here for a little bit and I knew the bar staff. A new guy comes in and starts hitting on the bartender. At first, she seems to just play along with it, so I ignore it, not my business. Time goes by, he's starting to leave, and he starts getting more and more aggressive on his hints at her. He wants her number, but she's giving him excuses like, "My phone is broken right now," and eventually she says, "Look, enough? No." And at this point, I'm paying attention, and he says she's just shy and he knows she would like it. She gets upset, asks him to leave. I tell him he should leave. He ignores me, and is still trying to smooth things over with her. Manager comes, who is also a woman, and tells him he needs to leave. I tell him again he needs to leave now, and by this point, there was a group of 3 construction guys who had gotten him up and come on over to the bar and was told he needs to pay and leave right now, or we guys will take care of him ourselves. At this point, he decides to pay and leave. Manager gave us all a round of free drinks. Guy came in again the next day when the owner was there. The owner called the police and trespassed him. Story 25. I work as security at a couple bars in my city. The one I was at for the longest was often referred to as having, quote, the best looking staff in the city. I was not included in that grouping. So we had this issue come up a lot with our staff, actually. Being the security manager there, I decided we needed a safe word to make sure no customer took it too far with previous incidents. One of the servers decided on dominoes. For example, hey, want to get dominoes after work? Since we could play it off. If they said it to me, I would come in and play the 5-minute boyfriend or remove the offending party if it gets too egregious. Only happened a couple of times, but it was always fun. After the bar shut down, we all scattered around the city but still kept in touch. One night, I was working at a bar on one end of the city, and the same server was now a bartender at a bar on the other end. I get a text from her that just says, Domino's. Obviously, I can't get there, and I let her know this and ask what's going on. She explains there's a creepy guy at her bar, and it's only him and her in the building, and he's getting more aggressive and everything short of begging me to get there. Thankfully, there's a bar I used to work at about a block away from her, so I was able to text one of the guys there to see if he can go check on her. He was the first person that came to my mind once I realized I couldn't personally help, so it was nice he was so close. Tiny by bouncer standards, but absolutely terrifying human being and one of my favorite people. He gets there, creep apparently swings on him for talking to his girl, and he removes the creep from the property. I asked for details, but neither of them will tell me the full story. I want to press the issue, but I also don't want to be an accessory after the fact. As far as I know, he and the bartender are together now, which is awesome. Modern day Romeo and Juliet. Story 26. I was on the weird end of something that feels like it should go here. Got together with a group of friends that just got off their work shifts and went to a local dive bar. One of the girls from work tagged along and had some shots with us. 3 to 4 shots in, she said, "This chocolate cake shot is amazing. I can't even feel the alcohol. I haven't had anything to eat all day, so this is like food, right?" She then proceeds to keep drinking to the point where she can't walk. There were 3 of us guys, and we had to literally carry her to the car and spend the whole night making sure she didn't pass away. Worst drinking experience ever. The bartender looked at us walking out the door like we were frickin' schmucks. I never went drinking with her again. There should be a safe word for guys to get bartenders to stop giving drinks to someone. Story 27. I was in a hotel bar and started talking to 2 gentlemen. I'm 31, Creep was maybe 45, the hero 50. Creep was clearly intoxicated. Each time he went to the bathroom, the hero would lean over and say, "He's been chatting up every lone woman all night." So Hero and I get up to leave around 11 and get in the elevator. He says he's going to 6. I say I'm going to 10. Creep comes running up to catch us. We ask what floor, and he says 10. The hero says, "Oh, me too." So floor 6 comes up, and I take the hint and get off. I wait a couple of minutes, and the hero comes back and tells me he is in the room right across from the elevator. I literally was in the room right next to this creep. I thanked him and snuck into my room. Thanks, hero. Story 28. I was the kitchen manager at a neighborhood bar. We had 3 safe drinks posted in the women's bathroom. Basically, just for severity and such, as some people didn't actually need to be walked to their car or anything, they just wanted help saying no to whoever was annoying them. One night there was a home game that was on. That bar gets so packed, people just end up standing all packed together after the seats fill up. As the game was ending, some people were leaving and the others who were sitting down were starting to close out. One woman had ordered a safe drink that basically meant the other person was pretty much getting way too touchy and she needed help immediately. The bartender immediately went to grab 2 bouncers. In the span of about 10 seconds, the bartender grabbed the man's drink from his hand, and the 2 bouncers picked him up, one by the neck, the other by the legs, and threw, literally, him in the grass outside. The general manager comped both tabs and then walked the woman to her car with his gun tucked in the back of his pants. Story 29. I didn't use a safe word, but I think I mouthed help to our waitress. I was about 21, seeking arrangements for the first time. None of my friends knew about it, and I was about an hour from home. We had some drinks and talked. I automatically didn't like him, but I wanted to see if I could talk money with him first. He kept pushing more drinks at me. I ended up getting pretty intoxicated, and he did too. Our server ended up cutting him off. He was getting really aggressive and was making me lowball offers for intimate stuff. I was frightened. The manager came over and said, "I think your car is being towed," to which I responded, "A black Prius?" She nodded. I walked with her to the front door and she offered me help. They kicked the guy out. He was belligerent. I tipped our server an extra 100%. She also ended up driving me in my car home once her shift ended, since I was intoxicated and so far away. Story 30. I saw a girl at the bar who seemed totally out of it, and she was with 3 guys that seemed way more sober than her. At one point, I saw the guys high-five each other and not her. She went to the bathroom and I followed. At the sink, I approached her and saw her lips were blue. I asked if she was okay. She said she didn't know. I asked if she knew the guys, and she said yes. I told her that I could call the police for her, and she said yes. I did, and she stood there watching me with her eyes rolling back in her head. The police said there was nothing they could do unless she called because she said she was with them and she may just be intoxicated and not understand me. Then one guy came into the ladies' room all, ha ha ha, what's going on? And then led the blue-lipped girl out as he said, let's go home, I think you drank too much. Then I left too, watching the two other random smiling guys walk out with them. I did see her on her own and way more sober down the road at the same bar. When I asked her about that night, she said she just broke up with him. I didn't pry. Story 31. I used to be a bartender at a tap house and club. While we didn't have a secret drink, if a guy ordered a drink for the lady and she seemed uncomfortable or really intoxicated, we'd address the lady and say, what would you like to miss? This usually gave the woman a chance to signal how she felt about the guy, and we'd alert the bouncer. One night, a woman that was visibly intoxicated to the point of passing stumbled up to the bar. A guy that seemed to be forcing conversation with her approached the bar right behind her. He came out of nowhere and seemed almost sober. He ordered shots for him and the lady, so I turned to her and said, what would you like to miss? She blurted out, not this freaking loser. Me and her started talking until the guy got visibly upset and left with his single shot in a plastic cup. As soon as he was out of eyesight, the woman straightened up and said, thanks, I was sure if I acted intoxicated, someone else would have gotten me away from him. Story 32. Pulling a classic Reddit and telling a story, kind of related. I was a server in this situation. So around 3 p.m., a guy comes in, says he's meeting someone, but he'll take the table now. He's a little awkward, kind of frumpy, and I wouldn't describe him as a GQ model. He gets water as he waits. In walks this woman who is absolutely gorgeous, and I immediately think there's no way she's meeting this guy, but he sees her walk in and calls her out by name. I figured they were probably friends or co-workers, but it was much too awkward and you could tell they had never met. They mill over their waters and order calamari or something to share. She asks where the bathroom is. I tell her and walk away, not thinking anything of it. I came out of the kitchen and she's standing outside the bathroom, grabs my arm and asks if there is a back door or any other way to get her out without being seen by the guy. I don't remember if it was a blind date or an internet match, but she wanted out. It wasn't what she thought and just wanted to leave. The only back entrance was through the kitchen, so I walk this woman in heels out through the kitchen as all the cooks stare, wondering what the heck is going on. I bring the guy his food, trying to play it cool, and he's not really fazed, thinking she's still in the bathroom. He's picking at the food. I ask if everything is okay, and he says he's just wondering where his date is. I have a female server go in the bathroom and check and report back. She's not there. I asked if he wanted the check or to keep waiting, and the dude must have waited around for half an hour before he asked for the check and finally left. She definitely wasn't in any danger, but she was way out of his league, and it was painfully awkward. I've been set up like that before, and if I could have had someone sneak me away from the situation, I would have, so I felt okay about helping her out. Story 33. Ex-bar manager here, worked in the industry for 10 years and even went to bartending school where they taught us ways to handle situations like this. I ran a downtown 3-story bar that was packed all the time. The safe word is a good thing. I've had many girls come to the bar looking for help out of a situation. I've had to get guys bounced out. I've had to pull guys aside and tell them to chill the heck out. I've cut many people off for being too wasted in my opinion. A young lady came up to me one packed weekend night. Apparently 3 guys were following her and constantly saying things to her, and you could tell she just wanted to cry and get away. She had that look and she ordered the highest level safe drink, a Hulk straight up. And right at that time, the 3 guys came up and one said he'd pay for her drink while the other started doing something weird. Man, when I saw that, I alerted security and jumped over the bar and grabbed 2 of the guys. And by that time, 4 bouncers were there helping, and they were all 3 promptly taken out a side exit to the alley. Later, the young lady explained how they followed her to 3 different bars, tried mistreating her on the dance floor, and consistently hit on her trying to get her back to their hotel room. She thanked me for jumping into action so quickly. Honestly, I don't even remember thinking, I just acted. My gut knew something bad was going to happen. I've got many more safe drink stories if anyone wants to hear them. Some crazy, some the usual intoxicated guy coming on too heavy. Be safe out there. That goes out to the guys too. See? I told you. I got some crazy stories. Haha. Story 34. I went to a late-night sushi place with an old friend who was going through a rough patch in life. He showed up smashed, and then he proceeded to order a huge bottle of sake and poured us both glass after glass while we were waiting for the food. He also took the opportunity to start professing his love for me while rubbing my upper thigh. I was way out of my comfort zone, almost entirely alone at this place at like 1 or 2 a.m., and I hadn't even received the food yet. I was panicking because I knew I'd get too intoxicated to comfortably leave if I kept up with the drinks he was pouring. We had a tea pitcher at the table, so I started dumping the shots into the pitcher when he would look away. Our server saw me and made eye contact, and he started coming to the table a lot to stand between us and pick up dishes. He brought a second tea pitcher and just placed it beside me so I could drink something else. He also came outside to run something to the dumpster when we were leaving. It wasn't much, but it was something when there was no easy way out. Story 35. I'd gone out dancing with some friends and got turned around while walking to the train station. When I realized my error, I started heading back in the same direction. A man came up behind me, pulled me close to him by putting his arm so tightly around me that I couldn't move away. He then grabbed my back and asked me how much. I was in jeans and a hoodie, so y'all can stop before you even ask. I locked eyes with a bouncer that I had passed by and said very loudly, "Hey, how are you?" and broke away while the guy was distracted to hug said bouncer. The bouncer went with it and invited me inside so I could sit and call for someone to pick me up after asking if I was okay. I've been eternally grateful for that bouncer. So, no date, just a random asshole on the street and a bouncer who knew what was up and was genuinely concerned. Story 36. Years ago, working as a bartender, a woman came in by herself, started chatting to a few of the bar staff, and it turns out she was meeting a date for a drink. He turns up, they sit at the bar, chatting and having a few drinks. About an hour into it, he goes to the toilet and she turns to us and tells us how awfully it's going. Nothing major, he's just a bit of a goober, bad at conversation, etc. One of the bartenders grabs her phone number. When he gets back, the bartender goes around the back and calls her, pretending to be her flatmate. "Our place has been broken into, all this stuff has been stolen, you better come home," etc. She plays it well, apologies, and says she has to leave immediately. He stays and has a drink, and just before he leaves, he turns to us and says, "There was no phone call there." And we had a level with him and told him she just wasn't feeling it. He looked pretty heartbroken and left. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.